Hello and welcome to 99 Yards, American football for UK fans. I am your host Liz Bindari, and this week I'm joined by Duncan Terry and George Somerville. How is everyone?
Doing good, thanks. Just fresh off listening to the Mike Carlson interview, which was superb. Feeling chipper.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Liz. 2 weeks on the bounce, I'm feeling privileged, or I'm stalking you. I'm not quite sure which, but it's good to be back. Thank you.
It's great to have you both back. So in this week's episode, we'll be talking about the Kareem Hunt release, college football, Green Bay Packers, and then we'll be taking some listener questions. So the huge news that came in earlier this week was about Kareem Hunt, who has been released by the Kansas City Chiefs. It's basically come in off the back of a video released by TMZ on Friday that shows Kareem shoving and kicking a female in a hotel. The incident happened back in February, and the NFL is now considering 3 separate off-field incidents whilst they try and basically work out how they're going to discipline him. The 2 other incidents, one was at a restaurant. It was an altercation back in June, which apparently the league have already questioned him over. And the other is a violent incident at a nightclub in January, which the NFL didn't find out about until recently. If I'm being honest, I'm a little bit shocked at how this kind of thing is only really coming out now, and how the Chiefs, who said they were aware of what happened in February, but basically took his word for it rather than investigating it properly. Now, we spoke on the topic of domestic violence in great length last week, but it just seemed that things like this only get taken seriously when a video is released showing what's actually happened. Almost like if there's no proof, let's just brush it under the carpet. What are your takes on this whole debacle?
So last week I was on the podcast and we were talking about Reuben Foster, and I think I said at that time that I wasn't sure that it necessarily was the role of the teams to police. I think I had reservations about how that was working. But when you read some of the stuff about Kareem Hunt, you wonder how much the Chiefs actually did to try and resolve this matter quickly. And I read a bit that said that they found out about the incident in the hotel actually quite quickly, and they spoke to him, and to my mind, the bit I read was that Kareem Hunt had said that really nothing had happened, and he said this to Andy Reid. So I think back to when players are scouted out by the teams, and when they're signed in free agency or signed via the draft and stuff like that, and the amount of due diligence that they do behind a player's reputation, his personality, his mindset, all of that kind of stuff, and the hours that they spend interviewing players and coaches and teammates and all of that kind of stuff. And then you have an incident here where clearly it was brought to their attention. They knew that he'd been involved in something, and they pick up the phone and they say to him, and he says, "Nah, it was nothing." And it just strikes me, it goes to the mindset of what teams are thinking, which is, this is our star running back, and we don't really want to jeopardise this. Can we brush it under the carpet? So I kind of struggle with this, and I read the Peter King column today, and he was saying that why can the teams get more information, get more evidence, investigate it a little bit more, because TMZ got the video. It appears quite easily, and I think the NFL were either told or certainly got the impression that they wouldn't get the video from the hotel. So something's not quite right with all of that. Clearly now what's happened is they're taking action. He's out, and from the little bit I've seen today, it doesn't look as if anyone's willing to pick him up. So action has been taken, but later rather than sooner.
I think for me, I've been trying to ponder this, and not in the way that what has happened is truly awful, and I'm glad that the Chiefs have finally taken some action, and I don't know the ins and outs of what they knew and might have known, so I don't feel qualified to comment. But what it has done is made me really think about what I think about these players. Now you've got Kareem Hunt, and the situation there is broadly similar to Ray Rice. And he was released by the Ravens, and he never made a comeback to the league. But then he was towards the end of his career. Hunt is only in his second year, and he's really damn good. So I think someone somewhere is going to pick him up. So a lot of teams you find I don't want to say don't mind these things. Of course they mind, but in some ways they're more open to signing players than others. So he's probably going to come back, and I don't know how to feel about that, and I need to process that a little bit. I mean, you've got in the league, you've got Frank Clark at my team, who had some trouble when he was a lot younger, and you've got Tyreek Hill also at the Chiefs, who again it's historical, and they seem to be reformed. And would I feel happy with Hunt coming back reformed? I don't know, and I don't feel like I'm the person to judge, but I need to take some time and think about it. I think, what if he ended up on my Seahawks? How would I feel about that? It's a very, very strange situation, and it's going to be an interesting future.
I mean, judging by kind of the news that's kind of obviously come out this week, it's obviously not just the one incident. It has been a couple. Clearly, he's got kind of anger management issues, and it's obviously something that needs to be worked on. I kind of always are hopeful that when a player is talented that they can sort it out. I kind of think when they prove time and time and again that they can't, you start to wonder, are they just a lost cause? So we'll see.
And I've been pondering Adrian Peterson in the same kind of way. I mean, 2-3 years ago, he got into trouble not only with the league but with the police for hitting his child with a stick, and it came out a couple of weeks ago. He's still doing it, and it's seemingly so everyone's talking about his 90-yard touchdown run. So it's where's the line? I mean,
you're right.
Difficult to process.
It is definitely. Join me in welcoming Tom Bloomfield from Oddschecker. Tom's a Tampa Bay Bucks fan for his sins, and for those unfamiliar, Oddschecker is a betting comparison site. They compare the odds and offers from leading bookies to ensure that you get the best possible bet. So Tom, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you with us again. How are you?
Hi Liz, I'm good, thank you. I'm glad you put for my sins for being a Bucks fan before I even got a It's been a good weekend though. The Bucks won 2 in a row, so I'm happy on a side. We've just come off the huge Tyson Fury fight, which is taking up a lot of our time at Oddschecker. See, not NFL based, but certainly kept us busy. But now we've only got a few more weeks of the season left, so let's see where the money. 3 games in particular, and I'll tell you what, I'll even put in my own 2 cents, and you can see if I'm right or wrong. I've got the feeling in my back.
We'll go for it. What can you tell us about Ravens Chiefs?
So first game we're going to look at is the Baltimore Ravens at the Kansas City Chiefs, 6 o'clock Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, and this one kind of looks like it's going to be home and hosed for the Chiefs. Very strong at Arrowhead, and of course, even though they haven't got one of their star players anymore for off-the-field reasons, they're still looking very comfortable. They are best price of 7-19 to win the game, which means £19 on will give you 7 back. To put it into perspective, most bookies are going 1-3, so put £3 on to win £1. If you fancy the Ravens to cause a big upset, you can get a best price of 13-5 on that, so £5 would return you 13. So we've got a very strong underdog there and a very strong favourite. Looking at the point spread very quickly, 6.5 points is the line that's been set by most bookies. So Baltimore Ravens would start on plus 6.5 with your bet. So that if they lost by less than that or even won, you'd win your bet. Best price on that is 24-25 with the Chiefs at minus 6.5. So starting on minus 6.5 points for your bet. That's at 20-21. If you want my opinion, for what it's worth, the Chiefs minus 6.5 seems like a very good bet. They've got easily enough firepower to get more than a touchdown victory here. Very strong at home, as we've said before. And I feel like Patrick Mahomes, even though he's going to be going against Lamar Jackson, who could possibly cause fireworks on the Ravens side, I think it will be a comfortable Chiefs victory. So go for the Chiefs minus 6.5.
Fantastic. And how about the late Sunday game? So that's Bears against the Rams. What are the best odds that you've seen for that matchup?
So the Rams at the Bears, this is 1:20 in the morning for Monday, so it's a Sunday night football game over in the States. It's quite tight, to be fair. The Rams are favourites, as you'd expect, not by a huge margin. So they're 5-8 best price, also 8-13 worked out about the same. That is the best price for the LA Rams. The Bears 6-4 underdogs in their own backyard, but you've got to feel that it's going to be a very tight, tough game. It's going to be nasty conditions probably in Soldier Field. It could favour the home side. I can't see the Rams going to be blowing them away like they have been for other teams. On the point spread markets, you've got 3 points the difference. My good friend and yours as well is Jeff Reinbold always says that a home team should have a 3-point advantage. That's what you're normally looking at. Because that's what the crowd can give you. So the bookies have got that exactly there. Plus 3 points for Chicago Bears. That's available at evens. The LA Rams -3. That's available at 9-10. I'll tell you what, I love the look of that Bears +3 at evens. Said before, all the advantages of playing at Soldier Field, especially in a huge game like this. The Bears are going to be up for this after getting their noses bloodied last week. It's going to be a tough, tight game. And I'm not going to say that the Bears are going to win, but looking at +3 at evens looks a good bet.
Awesome. And saving the best till last, what can you tell me about Monday Night Football? So it's the game that puts my team, Seattle Seahawks, against Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah, I thought you'd say it'd be the best till last. You're going to have to stay up quite late for this one, 1:15 in the morning on day. So Monday Night Football. We've had some good Monday Night Football games the last few weeks. We'll see if this one's going to be any good as well. Seahawks are very comfortable favourites. At 3-5 best price you can get for them, with the Vikings available at 31-20. Looking at the point spread market, you've got another 3-point game. So 3 points is the common line. The Vikings +3 is available at 21-20, and the Seattle Seahawks -3, and that's at 9-10. But if you fancy a lot of points in this game, then the point spread market is looking at around 45 points. So over 45 points is 10-11 best price. Under 45 points is at evens. I think these are two offenses that can comfortably clear 45 points. The Seahawks is hanging around in there. They've definitely got playoff ambitions this year. In fact, I would be quite surprised if they didn't make the playoffs, in my own personal opinion. I like the look of the 45 points market at 10-11. In terms of a winner, I might have to sit on the fence with this one. There's definitely cases you can make for both sides. If I had to say which team represented the best value, I would probably say the Vikings at 31-20 is definitely a good bet. But the Seahawks don't lose many in their own backyard, and I think that they've got a point to prove, and certainly going to be focused now we're getting to the business end of the season. So go for the Seahawks if you'd want a team, but I love the look of that overs in the points market, total points.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that, Tom. It's great to get Odds Checker on board, and we look forward to hearing more from you next week.
Yeah, fantastic. Remember, you can always follow Odds Checker on Twitter at Odds Checker for all the latest tweets that we've got from a wide range of sports. Got our own YouTube channel as well with lots of content from Jeff Reinbold and the NFL Talk UK guys. That's Odds Checker TV. Also got Instagram, which you can follow us on as well at Odds Checker TV. And we have our Facebook as well, where we have lots of different videos and fun stuff for you as we're coming up to Christmas.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Liz.
Now, George, you are our leading man on the college front here at 99 Yards. In fact, with Ollie and Alex, between the three of you, you've been sharing some really excellent content and commentary on the games. For those listening, what can you tell us about the college rankings that have been finalised? Are they fair?
So that was the 2 weeks ago was the last game of the regular season, and the weekend there was the kind of divisional deciding games. So what we ended up was, I'll go into that in a little bit of detail in a second, but what we ended up with the top four of Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame and Oklahoma. There was top four, and then the following four after that were Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan and UCF. Now, the big interesting game for most people was that the SEC division title game was between Alabama and Georgia, which, if you've never watched college football, please go and get the replay of it, because probably one of the most exciting games. And I'm an Alabama fan, so I kind of hold my hands up. But one of the most exciting games we've seen in years. And coming from college football, that's quite a thing to say. So Alabama won out on that game. It was a really, really tough battle. So that kind of cemented them in number one. And Clemson were runaway winners in the ACC. Notre Dame didn't have a game at the weekend because I've talked before about their independent status. They had no divisional title game to play for, so they finished their season undefeated at 12-0. And then Oklahoma beat Texas in another excellent game, which was a rerun of the Red River rivalry, which was played earlier on in the season, and that kind of cemented, not just it brought them in as number 4. And Georgia slipped out because Georgia were beaten by Alabama. So a lot of debate about that kind of switch over, but that was how the 4 were formed. And so what that means is that we've now got effectively a couple of semi-finals. Alabama will play Oklahoma, and Clemson will play Notre Dame, and those are pretty attractive fixtures. In Alabama and Oklahoma, you have 2 of the highest scoring offences in college football, and Clemson, who just have a fantastic defence, but are also very talented on the offensive line, come up against. I'm going to say Notre Dame fans will probably shout up and down at this, but the kind of great unknown with Notre Dame because of the way that they play their schedule. But I mean, I think that's a very attractive game. So the question is it fair? Well, these teams have all played their way into the top four. The College Football Playoff Committee spend kind of hours, and actually they all this weekend they all sat together as a committee and watched the games together as a committee, which I think is the first time that they've done that. So it meant that they were kind of discussing it live in the room at the time. There have been calls to televise that. I'm not sure how watchable all of that is, but it certainly adds a different dynamic to it. So really exciting weekend of college football, and then that leads us on to the bowl games, and then the title playoffs at the end of December. So we get to pause for a second or a couple of weeks, and then the excitement starts again around about Christmas time.
George, I have a question about those rankings, if it's all right. Georgia just dropped out at the end, having lost an exciting game against the number 1 Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, Ohio State were talked about coming back in, maybe, and they've just had an awful year. They lost to Fresno State. I mean, no disrespect to them, but they're not Alabama. My question sort of is around, if Georgia, say, had lost to Alabama at the beginning of the season rather than right at the end, would that have had less effects? Maybe they'd be in, because I think they deserve it.
So that's a good question, and that's where most, if not all, of the debate was had pre and post the game on Saturday, because and in fact we discussed this at 99 Yards Towers the other day between the college team, because I think I'm right in saying that no 2-team loss has ever made it into the college playoffs, and that's the great. I don't know what the opposite of Nirvana is, but that's the great debate is, if you're a 2-loss team, can you make it into the playoffs? Now, everyone else, in the top 4, we've got 3 undefeateds, and we've got Oklahoma at 12-1, and then what you've got is next Georgia at 11-2. Now, if you recall, some weeks ago, and I spent a lot of time talking about quality of schedule and quality of wins, quality of defeats. And if you're going to have a quality defeat, then Georgia's defeat to Alabama was as good as it's going to get. So you're right. It was a very good defeat. And what makes it even more startling, I think, is that everybody has recognised right from the start of the season that Alabama are the number 1 team in the nation. Now, they've had some tough games, and their run-up was particularly difficult, and they've survived all of those. They survived LSU, they survived Auburn, and then they beat Georgia. So there's no doubt that they're number 1. So Now, I'm guessing what we'll find out how close Clemson are, on the assumption that Clemson get through to the national championship game. But I think where Georgia, where you've run, and by run I mean I think we were in the last few minutes of the fourth quarter, where there was just a sensational overturn of that game, and I'm going to write about it this week, so I might not go into it in too much detail here. But Georgia effectively lost the game again in the fourth quarter, but they've lost narrowly to a team that everyone considers to be head and shoulders above all the rest. So if you look at that as a quality defeat, is that then better than Oklahoma's record of 12-1? And Oklahoma's record is simply down to the fact it's got probably the most exciting offense in whole of college football. I mean, Kyler Murray has been fantastic. They've got a great offensive line, but their defensive situation is not so good. So, effectively they go up the other end of the park, score loads of points, but at the other end they're kind of shoveling points away behind them. And that's where all the debate was. The debate was, well, actually, is it better for Georgia to be in number 4 than Oklahoma? Now, I think what they've got in the playoff is they've got the most attractive playoff game in Alabama and Oklahoma, because you get Tua Tagovailoa playing Kyler Murray. And I think everyone wants to see that. I mean, they'll sell tickets 4 times over for that game. So I think they've got what the people want, effectively. But Georgia are feeling a bit miffed. Ohio State are feeling a bit miffed. But then I think Ohio State's run, which was a very good run, came at the end of the season. And I think their loss kind of really did. And you're right, they've not had a great season. I think Dwayne Haskins in the last 3 or 4 games has been really quite sensational, but I think it was too little too late for them.
And then also this morning, the Heisman candidates came out. What are your thoughts on that?
So the 3 finalists are Tua Tagovailoa, got Kyler Murray and Dwayne Haskins. So we've spoken about all 3 of them in the last couple of minutes. So it's not unusual for 3 quarterbacks to be the finalists. I don't think there's been there might have been one defensive player or winner going back. But typically it's the QBs or the running backs who win it. I mean, Tua, Kyler have been fantastic. Dwayne Haskins has had a really great last 4 or 5 games. I mean, some of the stuff that this guy has been doing is really quite impressive. But I think both Tua and Kyler Murray are both on course to break the quarterback ratings records which were set by Baker Mayfield. But just to put, not to run Dwayne Haskins out of this argument, he leads the college football in the entire country. He's thrown 47 touchdowns and for 4,580 yards on a statistic. So he's had a pretty good season. But Tua's has got a QB rating of 94.2 and Kyler Murray's is 96. So these boys have had exceptional years. Tua didn't have a great game on Saturday. He got injured. And he ended up out of the game, and he's been carrying an injury for a wee while. I still think he's a favourite. I think Kyler Murray's putting a very strong case, and of course, Kyler Murray's the big debate is he's already he went into the Major League Baseball draft. Got drafted to the Oakland A's, so he will be playing baseball next season. Although he kind of threw some debate into that in an interview with Tim Tebow this week, where he said the plan just now is to play baseball. But I think it would be it would be, I don't know if it'd be shock if Tua didn't win it. I mean, Tua's run up those numbers without really playing much of any fourth quarters. He played fourth quarter against LSU, Auburn, and then Georgia. All the other games he was able, the game was won and over, and he was able to be rested by the fourth quarter. So I don't know what he would have done if he'd managed to play the ends of all these other games. So his season's been quite exceptional. But we're talking about three very talented players.
What happened to the running backs? There was the fellow from Stanford, and I believe, forgive me if I get his name wrong, is it Jordan Taylor at Wisconsin? Weren't they supposed to be having big seasons?
Yeah, we were expecting a big season from Bryce Love at Stanford. There's been a lot of injuries to running backs, Duncan, this year, and the running backs haven't really come to the fore as much in this year. I think I really liked Taylor at Wisconsin, and he did have a pretty good start to the season. But then, Wisconsin had a very disappointing season. I tipped Wisconsin to be a playoff team, and they really haven't been playing well at all, which is a bit of a shame, to be honest. But they've just kind of, and Bryce Love's been injured. I mean, you might recall he carried an injury for most of last season and broke records with while having that injury. But I just wonder if that's kind of come back to haunt him a bit. Myles Gaskin at Washington is another player who has the potential to be. All these guys have the potential to be running backs on a Sunday. But I think he's had a disappointing season. But again, on the back of Washington, they've just crept into the top 10 in the rankings. But Washington had a very poor season, so it's been a bit of a bad year for the running backs, and I think that it will impact on their draft status. I don't think we'll see too many running backs going in the first round of the draft.
They're all seniors, are they? The ones you mentioned?
So we expect Gaskin to go, and Bryce Love is a senior, so he definitely will go. And I think, you would expect to see him, but I think just looking at some of the mock drafts, none of them are going first round. Right. They're all looking at probably second round stuff.
Yeah, it shows a real change in offences in the NFL too, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that, George. And to anyone who fancies learning more about college football, head to www.99yards.com and click college at the top of the page for the latest news and views. Now, let's talk about your team, George, the Green Bay Packers. They fired Mike McCarthy on Sunday after their loss to the Arizona Cardinals. Do you feel that it was fair, and where do they go from here?
So, I think we try and put this in a little bit of perspective, because I could see it coming. The timing was maybe a little bit surprising, but I think after the game against the Cardinals on Sunday, I'm not sure it could have gone on for much longer. But putting it into perspective, Mike McCarthy's 13 seasons at Green Bay, he's got them to the playoffs 9 times. And he's the longest serving coach since Curly Lambeau. So I mean, I think that's he's a very good innings as a head coach, and you cannot compare like with like, and I'm not trying to, but he was there 4 years longer than Vince Lombardi, 6 years longer than Mike Holmgren. So he's been in there and he's done well. It's certainly in his initial period. I think the last 2 or 3 years have been disappointing, and I think some of that is to do with the drafting. Some of that is to do with the policy. And I read a stat this morning that in 37 starts since Christmas Day 2015, Green Bay is 18 for 18 and one draw. That is not really the kind of record that the Green Bay Packers are looking for. So while I think he's done an incredible job in his 13 years, it just felt a little bit over the last 5-6 games of this season that the players weren't playing for him. I mean, there's a lot of talk about his relationship with Aaron Rodgers, but it just felt as if the tide had turned, and clearly the team took action today.
It's an interesting one. teams at the moment, they seem to be wanting to get a head start on Black Monday, don't they? Maybe line up the next coach before everyone else does. You've got several teams who are going to be looking this year, but regular listeners will know about my pessimism for my own team in Seattle. I thought this might be the season that we say, Carol, you were wonderful, thank you very much, but to move on, and it's actually Green Bay, and I hope they gave him a great send off, because he really earned it.
Joining me now is Rich King, one half of our fantasy football duo here at 99 Yards. How's it going, Rich?
Not too bad, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. To any new listeners, each week Rich and Chris join us to give the latest in fantasy football and let us know who they're going to be sitting and starting each week. So, Rich, what can you tell us about the week ahead?
So there's a couple of decent options this week. So for my quarterbacks, in a lot of these positions, I was kind of between two players, so I'm just going to give two for each. So Jameis Winston coming up against New Orleans. It's a pretty good matchup. He's at home. We just saw how he performed against Carolina. I think that he's certainly a guy who's got a really high ceiling. So if you're going up against the like Todd Gurley owner or something like that, and you need a lot of points, Winston's definitely one that you can start. And I actually think he's got a pretty decent floor with his rushing numbers. A lot of people massively underestimate how much he actually rushes. So he's a pretty good start this week. Lamar Jackson as well for the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens actually have one of the easiest playoff schedules. And everyone earlier in the season was really excited for Joe Flacco. And there's no reason to stop that with Lamar Jackson. He is not a great passer, but in all fairness, he really doesn't need to be. I mean, he's putting up decent running back numbers, so he seems almost like a running back who can pass. So if you need a quarterback and he's available in your league, he's definitely worth an ad, especially coming against Kansas City, who have struggled against the rush this year. My sit this week is Matt Ryan. Really struggled against the Ravens, which admittedly is a hard defense to play against, but going up against Green Bay, who've just lost their head coach, I think that he's going to really struggle. The Falcons seem like they're just kind of dialing it in now, just want to get the season finished. So I think that Matt Ryan might really struggle in this game. Moving on to running back / tight end, depending on what site you play on. Jalen Samuels of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The reason I say that is because if you play on Yahoo, he's actually listed as a tight end, which probably means that he's already been absolutely snapped up in your league. If you can get the Pittsburgh Steelers starting running back, then you should always start them, essentially. So this is more just a public service announcement for that. Second running back is LeGarrette Blount, who has been seeing more and more work with Kerryon Johnson missing time, and this week going up against the Arizona Cardinals, who don't seem like they can defend running backs at all. I just think that's a great matchup, especially being that Matthew Stafford's going to be without a number of his receiving options. My sit this week is Dion Lewis, who's coming up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are pretty good at defending the run. The Titans' offense this year has been a bit up and down, so I just think that if you're expecting him to put up decent numbers, you might be disappointed. My wide receivers, there's a late addition, literally from the last couple of minutes, as a result of Emmanuel Sanders having torn his Achilles. So I'm going for Cortland Sutton, because there is no one really else in this team who can catch the ball. And after coming off a game against Cincinnati where he caught 4 passes for 85 yards and a touchdown, coming up against the 49ers, that's an equally juicy matchup. Amari Cooper is my other start. He just seems like he's really, really improving since he's gone to Dallas, and just seems to be just looking a lot better there. So I think he's definitely a guy that you can put in your team, which is quite strange. Don't find myself saying that too often. My sit is in the same game, and that's Alshon Jeffrey. he really, I wouldn't be surprised to find out that he's carrying some type of an injury. He's just really not getting any kind of separation, and Carson Wentz just isn't looking towards him. Seems like Golden Tate and Zach Ertz are really taking on the majority of the passing work. So Alshon Jeffrey is kind of an avoid against the Dallas defense, who's actually surprisingly good in the league. Moving on to the worst position to really talk about, in my opinion, tight end. You could essentially just kind of throw a dart at this point, because unless you've got Travis Kelce or Zach Ertz, you're really just hoping for a touchdown. So the two guys I've chosen for starts have a decent shot at that. So we've got David Njoku going against the Cleveland Browns, going against the Carolina Panthers. It's not a bad matchup at all. And Baker Mayfield is certainly a guy who looks confident and is happy to pass the ball to Njoku. So coming off a game where he had 6 targets for only 8 yards, you might actually be able to pick him up in in your league, because some people have just dropped him. Vance McDonald is also an intriguing play against Oakland. Pittsburgh are really just flying on offense, so if I can get a small part of that, then great, especially in a position where I'm just looking for a touchdown. My sit this week is Cameron Brate, which is a bit strange considering that one of my starts was Jameis Winston, who seems to love Cameron Brate, but I just can't see him really scoring a touchdown this week. He's going against the Saints, who are one of the better units at defending the tight end, and it seems as though everyone was ready to announce that Cameron Brate was the guy as soon as O.J. Howard went down with an injury, but it seems like some of those targets have actually gone on to Adam Humphries, who is... I haven't mentioned him, but if you've got him on your bench, then he should be in your starting lineup, really. So they're my start sits for this week. Best of luck, guys.
Excellent stuff. Well, thanks for that, Rich, and we'll look forward to hearing more on all things fantasy football next week. In the meantime, if anyone has any questions for Rich, you can tweet him at RichKingFF. And before we end today's show, I have a couple of listener questions. This one is from the 5 Yard Rush podcast guys. Which coaches in the league are playing for their jobs in the next 4 games, and which coaches, no matter how the team finishes, are already cleaning out their desks?
Good question. Hi, 5 Yards, 5 Yard podcast. Thanks for your support. I will start with the obvious. Bengals, Marvin Lewis. He's got to go. Surely his time has finally come. They've been just the distinctly most average team in the league for far too long now, and something really has to change. Obviously, you've got New York Jets. Todd Bowles is going to be on his way out. Who else? There might be a surprise. I don't think he should go, but it's going to be talked about because the 49ers have really been poor for the last 2 years under Kyle Shanahan. And I don't think that's all his fault. He's had a lot of injuries. He's playing with players now who started the last preseason game. He's been really hamstrung there with injury concerns, but his name is going to come up. So, it's going to be some interesting times and a few surprises, I think.
And this one is from Kieran Tavam, who asks, who do you guys see topping the NFC East? This year seems to be a case of the best of a bad bunch coming out on top. I can't recall a season where all 4 teams have been no better than average.
Gosh, yeah, it really is. It's just sort of an awful division. I think it's been said on the pod before, and they're forced down our throats on prime time every week. And unless you're a fan of their team, I'm sorry if you are, but please, just give us someone else. But I can't see past Dallas anymore. There's too many key injuries and poor form on the other teams. Golden Tate was a smart move by the Eagles. That really, hopefully, they should be filling a need there, but I don't think it's enough at this stage of the season, and Dallas are really finding some form. I'd picked the Giants at the beginning of the season, so it shows what I know. But with Colt McCoy running the Washington Redskins offense now, and Mark Sanchez even, he's also had a game. So unfortunately, the Cowboys have got it wrapped up, I think.
And this one is from Andy T. Is Aaron Rodgers the most overrated QB of all time, based on achievement and record against the top teams? Yeah,
I've been looking forward to this one. Gus, He's having a down year for sure, maybe a down couple of years. And now Mark McCarthy's gone, and not least for I think we mentioned earlier that maybe the league is changing, and Green Bay haven't made any changes to try and keep up with the league, and their offense has grown stale, so they're going to bring in someone new. And no, Aaron Rodgers, he's not overrated. He's a great quarterback, and I would love him on my team. He's going to come good. He hasn't had the most supportive cast in recent times, and in some ways, this is a big bugbear of mine. The quarterback is on such a huge contract that it's really difficult to build a team around him. Once they've signed it, you'll notice that the top teams of the last few years have all had, well, not necessarily all of them, but most of them, Tom Brady excluded, have had their quarterbacks on their rookie deal. So, again, that's another way the league is just changing. But no, I wouldn't count Aaron Rodgers out.
And the final question comes from Gary Jordan. While the Cowboys' defence is gaining momentum and carrying the team, who is now most key on offense if they're to make a run in the playoffs? Is it Zeke, Dak, Cooper?
Well, out of the three you've asked us about, I would go with Cooper. He's not the most talented receiver in the league. He's very, very good. But he's made a change to that offense because they really were getting no one open. Other teams were able to stack the box, and Elliott wasn't getting the room. And now that Cooper's there, they're having to take care of the passing game as well. And there's more holes available for Elliott, as you've seen the last couple of weeks. So out of the three, I'll go Cooper, but I'm going to throw in one more and give you Tyron Smith. That game on Thanksgiving, they looked really ordinary with him injured. And he's going to be so important in keeping Dak upright and just the whole focal point of that offense, the running game and just being able to do anything. We'll really need him to stay fit now.
Awesome. Well, that's all for this week's show. Thank you to Duncan, George, Tom and Rich for joining us. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the topics we've discussed and, of course, any feedback you may have. You can tweet us at 99yards. If you're a regular listener and enjoy our show, we'd love you to leave us a star review via Apple Podcasts or the provider you're listening to us through. And don't forget, if you haven't already heard it, earlier this week we dropped a special podcast, Life and Gridiron Times with Mike Carlson. Until next time, thanks for listening.